Wow. How about that?
Well, a couple things. If you want your bebop, you got it
Yeah,
right there,
that's
and
it.
and yes, Coltrane, but also Miles. I mean, it's a perfect solo. I mean, he may have been anxious to get the record deal done, but yeah, the playing was absolutely superb by both of them. I mean, just
Right, and
incredible.
and the rhythm section too. So the,
Oh,
the, the, the recording session, from all accounts, was done like a live show. So this was a band that played live a lot, and so they had their live presentation tight. Those guys, everything's memorized. There's no music on stage, and the set list is memorized, and you go from tune to tune, showbiz style, bam, 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 and there's a formula. Whether blues rhythm changes, ballad, or fast original. Everything's tightly controlled, woven together, presentation tight, rehearsed, played into the dust. Lots of improvising, yes, but first and foremost, this is a show, and it was taken seriously, and things were rehearsed. It wasn't like jazz today is like, hey, let's get together and blow some bullshit on a tune. Like, no, no, no. This was a concert. This was a presentation. Now,
yeah.
how about the difference between May 11th, 1956, where we heard Salt Peanuts, and this session was the second session where they recorded those four albums in October of that year. Now, I gotta say, as a bass player, as an acoustic bass player, that session right there, PC's walking sound is perfect. That's my role model for how you walk the bass on fast tempos. For some reason, October, I'm sure it was a very nice, crisp, uh, relatively low humidity, beautiful New York autumn day that the bass loves. Basses love that weather, and he's got the action. He's got the action just right, and the doom 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 doom. It's phenomenal. That's my go-to recording session right there, October 26th or whatever it is, 1956. Paul Chambers on fucking Aerogen. That's it right there. What a
Man.
beautiful. And how about Coltrane's tone? Now you see
Oh yeah.
what he's getting from Stitt on tenor is what you're getting from Bird. I call it like it's kind of got that glassy edge to it. Like when you think of tenor saxophone, don't you always think of that? It's got
Yeah.
this kind of zhuzh and kind of roundness, where you, like almost bushy. Yeah,
The
the
big
big ten.
breathy
Yeah, the big.
sound. Yeah.
Yeah, the big tenor thing, and part of that would be like the reed's bigger than an alto reed, right? And it's got more fiber to it, and so that it doesn't do that clear as glass, highly articulated thing that Bird does. The reason why Bird uses the hardest reed is because he's looking for the edge on the tone to be so clear so you can hear every note articulated when he plays 30-second notes, or
Right.
when he plays fast, quarter note equals 320, 340, and he's playing eighth notes at that blistering speed. He wants it to be clear so he's intending all of this. Jocko on the bass, it's very articulated, almost overly articulated. It's so That's the urgency, is in the articulation, and to do that you use a hard reed and that glassy edge to the timbre. And Train's got that in spades right there on Aerogen, doesn't he?
Mm. Yeah.
It's already, and that's what he becomes known for. And that was a very different thing for the tenor to be doing. People were put off by it, and unaccepting of it. Like, what instrument is that? They would say, what is he playing? It's not an alto. Is that a tenor? They couldn't imagine what he was playing.
Wow. Interesting. Now, I think this would be a good point um, for me and the rest of us music fans who have not studied jazz and bebop, to a deep degree. Um, can you kind of sum up, because we talk so much about the new language that Thelonious Monk and Bird were bringing into jazz from the kind of swing era and then into bebop, and I think we understand that it's lots of fast chord changes and this new harmonic kind of language. But can you kind of just give a little brief lesson of kind of what bebop is?
Sure.
so that when we're hearing a tune like this, we can kind of get a sense of what they're doing on the kind of harmonic side of things. Like
Okay.
what is
I'd be
bebop?
Yeah, I'd be glad to. Okay, so everybody wants to start with the intervals. So what note you're playing in the harmony, and what harmonic substitutions you're playing. And of course, this is an important element, but there's other important elements of the music to be taken into consideration. And as with all black music, it starts with the rhythm. So the music is now divorcing itself from its dancing swing band roots. It's evolving out of, and the great proponents that it's evolving out of are Art Tatum, Duke Ellington, and Lester Young with Count Basie, and Coleman Hawkins. These are important bringers of the new language. The new language will then be Monk, Bird, and Dizzy. Those are the fountainheads of the new language. The music's faster. The music's not played for dancing. The music's played like concert music. The music's influenced by modern classical music, Stravinsky, Bartok, Ravel, Debussy. See,
Now, where do we hear the? I mean, explain what that influence is in these more complex chords and finding
yes,
the.
yes. So first and foremost, the great innovation in bebop is the substitution of chords, mostly the tritone substitution. So if you're on a F blues, when you go to the 4 chord, the B flat 7 chord, the 4 chord, before you do that, you play B7 and then you go down to B flat 7. And then before you go back to F7, you play G flat 7 back to F7.
So you're kind of taking leading tones or tones next to the
correct.
main chords to get more
Correct.
movement in the music. So you're
the bass players are doing that anyways, because that's how you play bass. So when you're
right.
playing, let's say, something simple like rhythm changes and blues, in order to make rhythm changes not sound lily white and corny like the original, you need to, the bass players are playing doom 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 ding dan doom doom ding dan. They're doing all these semitone leading tones that make the music sound more dark and mysterious and more interesting and have more of the blues in it and a little more chromaticism. So Bird's hearing that, and he's playing the tritone polychords that he hears in Stravinsky. That's polytonality. And so bebop is starting to employ modern things like polytonality.
And polytonality is
F sharp 7 over C7. The classic is the tritone polychord, where you play F sharp 7 over C7. And the bass player is playing either one. They have the same guide tones, the 3rd and the 7, the same tritone. You're just changing the root. So they go together really well. Monk takes that, of course, further like only Monk can, but he's also using it for pianistic resonances, as is Art Tatum. Art Tatum's harmony is very, very advanced and pointing the way to all of this, even in the 30s. Now, the thing to remember, though, what bebop, which is unfortunately not a great name for such a complex and modern music. It sounds whimsical and kind of like something that comes out of a can or something, right? Like a pop. Unfortunately, it's not a great exalted title for an exalted music. So Bird, Dizzy's approaching it from more of a entertainment thing. And when he heard things like the minor 7 flat 5 chord, that was a new chord at the time. So if you're in C and you have the 4 chord minor, the 4 minor, Neapolitan 6th chord, F minor 6, F, A flat, C, and D natural. That's the F minor 6 4 chord. Now you put the D in the bass. You put the D in the bass and you take the subdominant function as a 2 minor 7 flat 5 chord. That was a new sound. And you put the 11 on top. Dizzy says, "Oh, I love it." Every single Dizzy composition starts with that chord. Every single one.
So in broad terms again, so they're taking these chords, expanding them, making them more complex, but finding the linkage to other chords and tone centers that
Well,
hadn't really been connected before. Is that a
and
way
what I'm
to
getting
say it?
to is what I'm getting to is that they're putting it into the linear music. So bebop is a linear innovation. It's a rhythmic innovation and it's a linear innovation. So you're taking those modern chords, especially what you can do on the dominant chords, the altered chords, sharp 9, flat 9, sharp 5, and the flat 5 chords and the sharp 11 chords that have all these modern resonances that are in classical music and in the piano music because they resonate using natural overtones. And so the modern music comes out of seeking natural resonances and the blues and the flat sevens and the way they vibrate on the piano. Now we're going to put them into the linear line. And so Dizzy and Monk are already doing it in New York, and then this kid shows up from Kansas City. What? From Kansas, some hick from Kansas City shows up, and he's playing what they're playing linearly, but the lines go long and clear as glass. That was new. And so Bird's codifying the next thing. Also, Bird's almost like a paranoid schizophrenic, bipolar disorder, a paranoid appraisal of modern reality. So all of this goes, he doesn't even play the melody of the song. He just launches off into his extemporaneous, shocking, virtuoso presentation of all this modern harmony erupting out of this junkie's alto saxophone, this hick from Kansas City. How did this happen? How did this happen? This is like a lightning bolt, and you're standing in front of this guy with genius pouring out of his horn, all this modern harmony coming at you at high velocity. Just incredible. So it changed everybody. Everybody was transformed by it. And so it's putting that into the linear conception of the music, the modern harmony. A lot of it's how you use the flat 6. Can I say it like that? There's certain harmonic language signposts, the C7 altered, the C7 flat 5, the C7 sharp 11, the 13 chords, the 9-13 chords, the minor 7 flat 5 with the 11 on top. When you play on the major chord, you play the flat 6 more than you play the natural 6. So that even the 1 chord has this modernism to it. The flat 6 is a major third away from the tonic. The major third's there, so if you're in C, you've got the E, and now you got the A flat. Do I hear giant steps coming up as an augmented chord? Yeah, it comes right out of the bebop line. The main bread and butter on the tonic pitch is to add the flat 6, so you have an 8-note scale. Do da dee do dee dee da da. So that would be C, B, A flat, G, F, E, D, C. So you have the good notes on the strong beat. You don't end up with the 4 on the strong beat creating dissonance against the third. And by adding the A flat, and then they add the A flat all the time as sort of a modern, something that's more lyrical and romantic, and that's also setting up the 3-tonic system that's going to come later on. So does that help explain that to you?
Well,
it's a lot easier if I demonstrate on the piano, of course.
Yeah. Well, I think that gives me an idea of the way the music is developing. We started off with simple, 1-4-5 blues, and now we're here.
It happened in a relatively short amount of time. I think it's important to remember that it's the piano voicings drawing from the resonances on the piano, right, and drawing from the Chopin onto Stravinsky, so to speak, and then you take that and you make that linear in the saxophones and trumpets, and then you speed everything up.
Right. So as you're playing these now more complex chords that have these interesting interrelationships, you've got Bird, and then we've got Miles and Coltrane who are playing over those quick, complex changes, and they're playing at this velocity that a brain has to be working at a very high function in order to be able to accomplish this task.
Yeah, and for it to flow freely like that and lyrically,
Right.
it takes a lot of poise. It takes a lot of. It's difficult to play at those fast tempos, as you know,
Yeah.
and to not just sound like a robot or just chopping through it. To actually speak like that. You have to speak that language. Now, also, this is a evolution. Bird and Dizzy are really innovating in the '40s, like Prez and Coleman Hawkins and Art Tatum are really innovating in the '30s. And there's a lot of crossover, not to get too dogmatic about eras and decades. And then Miles and Train are really taking us through the '50s into the '60s. And Bird had already become a sad caricature of himself by '54.
So it's really a changing of the guard.
Yeah,
in that way.
Bird even said to the other young guys numerous times that I'm just going to have to get up on out of the way so you guys can go ahead and take it forward. And he meant he was going to have to fucking die. And there's that sort of prescient tragedy that Jocko has about himself that Bird had, and it's a tough one.
And they almost died at the exact same age, right? I mean,
that's the Jesus age. Yeah, you die at 36.
Yeah.
35, 36. There's the 29 club and there's the 36 club.
Yeah.
And Train almost does the 36 club. He got 4 extra years.
Right.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Wow. Okay, so let's listen to we got the last of the kind of the 3 Miles cuts here, and this is a famous tune and a famous recording, Around Midnight. This is now the first recording he's doing with Columbia, or?
Yeah, he had been doing some sneaky recording as early as '55, but that was very hush-hush and sort of preemptive. And because he was setting himself up for the deal, he just needed to get out of his Prestige deal. That's why he recorded all those records in 2 dates.
Right.
So now this sets up his first record for Columbia, Around Midnight, and he had success with it. And that set him up to really succeed. Miles, this is at that Newport Festival. And that sort of announces to everybody, not only is this band here, but Miles is clean, and Miles is taken it to the next place. So with this Around Midnight, unbeknownst to most people, you have the now famous intro and outro, and everybody thinks Dizzy wrote them, and ordinarily you would think so, and maybe Dizzy had a part in them, but from what I understand, the arrangement on Round Midnight was actually done by Gil Evans, and gets no credit for it. Like a lot of Gil's stuff, he doesn't take any credit for things. He's kind of a selfless guy that he was. And
Gil Evans is an arranger who later will become famous when he does those classic albums with Miles Davis, Sketches of Spain and Porgy and Bess and those albums. But so he was arranging and writing earlier than that for these guys.
They all hung out in his basement apartment. He had this like crash pad basement apartment where everybody would go hang out and learn about the intervals. Because Gil Evans was really adept at being able to show, you don't voice it like this. Chopin voices it like this. You voice it like that, and the resonances happen. So he's a teacher of George Russell, Miles. Like you go down the Jerry Mulligan. All these guys were hanging out at his place, learning how to write. Learning the real harmony of the music, and Gil's like the linchpin of the whole thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's listen to Around Midnight on an album called Around Midnight, Miles Davis with John Coltrane.